Welcome to the Reindl Report.
Hey, here's a hot take for you. Steph Curry, most overrated basketball player I've ever seen.
A podcast out of San Diego, California that rewrites the definition of mediocrity.
Yeah, and I don't trust anyone that calls a hot dog a sandwich. Are you crazy?
Are you stupid or something?
And I'll tell you another thing. You know what? I think pineapples do belong on pizza.
Honestly, as stupid does.
I think watching pitchers try to hit in baseball is one of the worst things in all of sports.
Oh my God, Paul, you make me so mad sometimes.
And I don't want to hear any of this 6-0 in the finals. LeBron James will retire as the GOAT.
Shut the up! Now, here's your host, Paul Reindl.
What's up? It's another podcast, episode 53. One more time, live from my living room couch. God, I love this. This is the Reindl Report. I am Paul Reindl. This is a sports podcast based out of San Diego, California, but we are going to be all over the place on this episode of the Reindl Report. Coming off a Labor Day weekend, a 3-day weekend. Hope you enjoyed yourself, whether you were barbecuing, went out to the beach, whatever you ended up doing on your holiday weekend. Hope you had a good one. Thanks for tuning in. Just an insane amount of stories to cover. I don't know how I'm going to get through it all, to be honest. There is so much to talk about, primarily in football, but there's some baseball stories that I could touch on. NBA, the Rockets being sold. I have no idea how I'm going to get through this. I'm going to be completely honest with you. There might not be a lot of structure to this podcast. I'm going to be bouncing all over the place. NFL, NCAA. So much to talk about, but I've got a lot of thoughts. I've got some takes. I want to get everything out there, but before I get into all the sports, before I get into that, I want to start with a PSA, little public service announcement here. Over the last couple of weeks, I've just been paying more attention to things, and I've caught myself acting or feeling a certain way. And I've had to catch myself and go, hey, just relax. So I'm gonna get into some detail here, but the moral of this PSA is just relax and have some perspective on things. So it started last week. If you're listening to this podcast in San Diego, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't live in San Diego, well, we had one hell of a heat wave last week. We were setting records left and right all over the county, triple digits, down by the beach. You know, the closer you get to the beach and the water, if you're downtown, it usually cools off. It was in the mid-90s downtown by the water, which is just, that does not happen very often. That was unseasonably hot. And I live in La Mesa towards East County, and it just gets at least 10 to 15 degrees hotter there than most other parts of San Diego. And I'm sitting at home. I am cranking the AC. I'm in the pool. I'm sweating my balls off. And I'm just thinking, this is not okay. Like what is going on right now? This is unbearable heat. And as I'm feeling that way, I get on Twitter, or I turn on the news, or I'm on some other social media, and I'm instantly humbled, I guess would be a word I could use, when I see some of the videos and the footage coming out of Houston with Hurricane Harvey, and now Hurricane Irma is coming in on the Florida coast, and I'm sitting here in San Diego complaining because it's a little warm, and I'm sweating, and I'm a little uncomfortable. And then I just see some just horrible images and videos of what people in Houston, Texas are going through, and how their lives have just been completely flipped upside down, whether they fled the city and they don't know what they're coming home to, or whether they stayed there and their house just got completely flooded. I mean, there was over 40 deaths confirmed from this hurricane. So that kind of just, I don't know if humbled me is really the right phrase here, but it's the only one that comes to mind at the moment. But it allowed me to just tell myself, hey, relax, You've got things pretty good, especially comparatively to some people, especially in Houston in this instance. You're okay. You can handle a little heat because it could definitely be worse. And I was just like, man, it gave me a little bit of perspective and a reminder that I needed for myself, that, hey, just relax. And just that being said, my thoughts to Houston, I want to talk about J.J. Watt towards later on in the podcast. I personally donated some money to the cause because it absolutely tugged at my heartstrings, seeing some of the videos of people being rescued. I don't know if this makes me a bad person. It might, but when I saw the videos and images of dogs being rescued or swimming through the streets and, homeless, I mean, that got to me being a dog owner, especially myself, but just seeing everything going on out there, it just reminded me, do not bitch and moan about a little bit of heat in San Diego, no matter how unseasonably hot that it was. Thoughts and my T's and my P's to Houston. Thoughts and prayers, absolutely. If anybody listening to this podcast knows anyone that is affected by the hurricane or that could potentially be affected by the hurricane coming into Florida this weekend, I'm with you. I mean, I feel for you. I really do. It's a terrible thing. But then something happened to me today, and this podcast coming out on Wednesday, September 6th, and it's coming out later on in the afternoon towards the evening, so maybe you're hearing it on September 6th, maybe it's Thursday, maybe it's Friday, maybe it's the weekend, I don't know. But on Wednesday, earlier today, I'm driving home, and in San Diego, we got so many freeways. I mean, what's the SNL skit? The Californians, bro, just take the 5 over to the 8, then you hop on the 6. There's just every freeway is the blank. And on my daily commute, I could take the 8 or the 805 to the 8 to get home. I could take the 805 over to the 52 and then hop on the 15. I could take the 52 all the way to the 125 up into La Mesa. I've got options. And so I'm sitting there and I'm cruising down the 805 south. Normally I take 805 to the 8 and that just gets me home relatively quickly. But I thought, you know what? Okay, switch things up. So I hop on the 52 eastbound and really not much longer after I got onto the on-ramp to get onto the 52 freeway, I start seeing brake lights. I'm looking around. I'm looking in my mirrors. Is it time? Can I get off? Because it's noon. It's 12 o'clock. Like, why is there a parking lot on this one freeway? I made a terrible mistake, and I thought I need to get off this freeway. I don't have time. I'm stuck, and I am stopped on the freeway. I'm pulling out Google Maps to try to, they tell you where the accidents are, and I'm like, okay, it's not too far. Maybe I can get through this. So I ended up sitting there for about 10 minutes, and I'm pissed. I'm so pissed off. I mean, I find it hard to believe that I'm the only person that is stuck in traffic, unexpected traffic especially. I mean, look, if it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 o'clock in the evening, you're expecting some rush hour traffic. 12 o'clock at noon, not so much. And so anytime there's unexpected traffic like that, I'm just like, what the F is going on? And about 10 minutes later, I'm cruising through, and then I see some cop cars, and I see some ambulances, and I see a car on the side of the freeway flipped over, completely destroyed. I mean, there were shoes in the freeway. Just pieces of car everywhere. And I don't know if it was a fatal accident. I sure hope to God it wasn't. And I did not look on any of the news websites to see if there was a fatality reported. But that was just another one of those humbling moments for me where I had to tell myself, relax. It was 10 minutes of traffic, and it's easy to get upset and just pissed off and what the hell is going on. And then you see something like that, one of the worst accidents I've ever driven past. And I'm just thinking, damn, I hope everyone's okay, but no matter what, and everyone involved in that accident is having a much tougher day than I am because I had to sit in 10 minutes of traffic. So another just reminder to relax. It's going to be okay. It could be worse. That had nothing to do with sports, but that was just me opening up a little bit. I find that that's one of my responsibilities in hosting a podcast. You need to get the authentic me. You need to get the real Paul Reindl. And so that was me being the real Paul Reindl for a little bit. But switching into sports here, getting into the meat of the podcast, there is just so much to get to. Like I said, we got football stories. We got baseball stories. Playoff races heating up in the MLB. The NBA, the Rockets being sold. LeBron James is always in the news, it seems like. Kyrie Irving trade. What to start with? Gotta start with football. Week 1 of college football over Labor Day weekend was incredible. There were some huge matchups, some great comebacks, crazy awesome games. The NFL is starting up again. It's tomorrow when this podcast is being recorded. Maybe you're listening to this on Thursday, and the opening kickoff is tonight. But football is back.
We are back, baby. We are back. We are back. Classic. We are back. We are back.
That's right, baby. We are back. We are back. Football is back. And now that I've narrowed it down to football, now that I've eliminated starting with baseball or the NBA or anything like that, I still don't exactly know where I'm going to start. But I guess since I kind of started on my little soapbox there with my PSA about the traffic and about the weather, we'll start with Hurricane Irma and the Bucs and the Dolphins. So this game had been in question for a few days now with the threat of the hurricane coming through, and where were they going to play? Were they going to be able to play this game? Were they going to move it to a neutral site? Were they going to just cancel the game, move it to a later date? We didn't know. Well, earlier today, Wednesday, September 6th, the NFL made their final announcement. They said the game would be moved to week 11, I believe it was. Had a brain fart there. Week 11. Both teams had a bye week on week 11, so it made sense that they could just substitute that date and become that week 1 now becomes week 11. And I think it's easy, and I fell for this as well. It's easy to say, well, why did they do that? Why couldn't they just find a neutral site? I mean, you got to think about it. Like, these are two teams that are hoping to be fighting for playoff spots at least, and for a contender, I mean, for any team really, a week 11 bye is about as clutch as it gets. You want that late bye. Teams get screwed when they get the week 4 bye. You play 3 games, you take a bye week, and then you got to play 13 straight. Well, now these teams, these two, the Miami and Tampa Bay, they're going to have to play 16 straight weeks. And I find myself a little bit conflicted because obviously, do not mistake me, do not get me wrong here. Football doesn't matter. It just doesn't. There are much more important factors and important things to think about, like the safety of these players and their families and everyone else that's going to be affected by this massive hurricane that looks to be hitting the Florida coast here any day now. And so it's easy to complain, but I don't think that it makes me a terrible person for at least wondering, did the NFL, was there anything else they could have done? I mean, obviously these players, they're not going to be sitting there and thinking, oh my God, we got to play 16 straight games because of this hurricane. They're probably pretty happy that they get to be with their families during this scary time. I'm sure that's the case. But if you're just strictly looking at the football side of things, then yeah, you could absolutely make the case that these teams are going to be at a much more of a disadvantage now because they're going to have to play 16 straight weeks. I would hope that, again, just for the sake of the football side of things, I would hope that the NFL switches things up, maybe moves things around. Maybe this, it's not set in stone. Maybe at least give them a couple Thursday night games back to back. Like, Try to spread it out a little bit. Give them a Thursday game and then the following, Monday game maybe. Flex a Sunday game. Whatever they got to do. You got to give these teams at least the most possible time off in between these games because they are going to be dogging it come week 11. I mean, they are going to be hurting. So overall, though, my point is there's bigger things than a football game. And I myself was like, well, BS. Why don't they just move it to a neutral site? There's got to be a college stadium or an NFL stadium not being used that's not too far away from Florida, but it's still out of the reach of the hurricane, and then they can play it there. But there's these guys. I'm sure most of them want to be with their families. Chris Baker, I believe his name is, defensive end for the Bucs. He did make a tweet and he pleaded to the NFL and the NFL Players Association saying, "I thought this league was all about safety. Like we don't want to play 16 straight games." So obviously that guy was acting on his emotions and he didn't want to play 16 straight games. But I got to imagine that somebody, whether it was somebody in the PR staff for the Bucs, a coach, a family member, a friend, I got to imagine somebody said, "Hey, Chris, dog, I get it, but there's more important things going on, okay? Everybody needs to be with their families right now. Get to safety. Do what you got to do to protect you and yours. We'll worry about football later. Worry about your family. Worry about your safety. Take care of things at home, and we'll figure out the football thing." And just kind of a note on that. And I didn't think I was gonna get so moral on this podcast, but yeah, I'm not exactly like freeballing it here. I wrote some things down, but it just seems to be a running theme here. But literally earlier today, somebody comes up to me. And I'm not going to use names, but they go, they were complaining because they had a couple of fantasy football guys that were in their lineup for week 1 that played for the Bucs and or the Dolphins. And they go, well, now I got to switch it up. Now I got to take so-and-so out of my lineup. Now they don't get a bye week. Now, and I'm going, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me right now? Do not bitch about fantasy football. I'm gonna say it one more time. This is something that you can use and you can take to anybody else that you encounter that says something along these lines. Tell them straight to their face. Tell them to take a seat, first of all. It's always good to just take a seat. Why don't you have a seat? And say, hey, do not bitch about your fantasy football team when there are thousands and thousands of people that are concerned for their lives and their homes and everything they have because of a hurricane that's about to hit. Do not complain about your fantasy football team. That's just a big no-no. All right, we're just gonna leave it at that. I wouldn't think I had to say that, but I still chose to. Let's not talk about fantasy football when we've got huge issues with huge implications coming up, and there are much more important things than your fantasy football team. I mean, I'm laughing even thinking about somebody just saying, "Oh, I know there's a hurricane, but Jameis Winston was my quarterback, and now what am I going to do?" Oh my God, just stop. The other story that came out today, Wednesday, was something that happened a couple of weeks ago, but came out today via a statement by the NFL player involved in the incident, Michael Bennett, who, defensive end for the Seahawks. He's a superstar, very socially active. He has been sitting during the national anthem all season long. He was protesting all of last year as well, supporting Colin Kaepernick and just using his platform and for his fight against social injustices being committed throughout the country. And Michael Bennett puts out a fairly lengthy statement detailing what he described as an injustice against him. So Michael Bennett, if you haven't seen this yet, or I don't know how you haven't. It's pretty big news, actually, by the time this podcast is being recorded. But Michael Bennett was at the McGregor-Mayweather fight on the 26th in Las Vegas, and something happened a few hours after the fight. We don't know exactly what happened. There was a shooter. People thought there were shots fired, and this casino and this nightclub, and it's just chaos. And Michael Bennett says that he was racially profiled by some police officers. And there is video that came out pretty soon after on TMZ, looked like a cell phone video of Bennett on the ground, handcuffed. He said the cuffs were so tight they were cutting off his circulation. The officer had his knee in his back, and he had a gun to his head and says, I'll blow your effing head off, something along those lines. Maybe not in those exact words, but there was the F word and blowing your head off were involved. And it looked really, really bad. And it was crazy that, I mean, obviously this could happen to anybody, and this has happened to plenty of people that over the last few years, especially, that don't play professional football, that don't have a platform with, millions of followers on Twitter and all that to stand out against these types of incidents. But just the fact that Michael Bennett is really one of the most notable athletes that has used his platform to speak out against racial injustices. Colin Kaepernick, obviously, kind of being the poster child there, but I mean, it's like 1 and 2, Kaepernick and Bennett. And so then for this to then happen to Michael Bennett was pretty mind-boggling. I mean, it was crazy. And I am personally trying to just reserve judgment because at first, yeah, I was pretty pissed. I thought it was extremely unfortunate. By all accounts, I have no reason to believe Michael Bennett was lying about anything. But there are two sides to most stories. I'm not going to say every story because, just for me personally, there's just been several things over the last couple months, especially where, it's not a political thing. It's not it's not left versus right. It's right versus wrong. Like, I just don't see how there's another side to some of the arguments that are being made about things. But this one, there was another side to the story. The Las Vegas Police Department ended up coming out later in the afternoon, and they said, look, we've got 100+ videos. They found Michael Bennett to be suspiciously hiding behind, I think he was hiding behind some slot machines, I think it was, and he took off running. And so the cops chased him down, and the cops said that he was released 10 minutes later, and there were no wrongdoings, and so they acted on him being a suspicious character. Again, they're under the impression that there was a shooting, an active shooter running around this hotel. They saw somebody acting suspicious, hiding, and then fleeing from the cops. So I'm kind of holding off because I don't know if it's possible. I guess I believe both sides. Michael Bennett is a really good guy, and there are hundreds of people with credibility that will back that statement up. People that cover him on a daily basis, people that have worked with him. This guy's got fundraisers and he's got charities all over the globe for just helping people. I mean, he's one of the good guys, all right? He's a good dude. So I have no reason to think that he was lying. He had a very emotional press conference talking about what was going through his mind and thinking how if he makes one mistake, I mean, the quote that really kind of got me was, he goes, I was one mistake away from today the Seahawks having a number 72 patch on their chest, meaning he was, he makes one move, he says one stupid thing and he's dead, and the Seahawks are honoring him with a patch. You never know. And those were his words, and I was like, damn, it got real. And then when he talks about how, he just wanted to be with his daughters and his wife, and when he started talking about his daughters, he got emotional and he just walked off the stage. It was powerful stuff. It was moving. And then I watched the press conference from the police the police briefing, and they showed a video of it, what it looked like somebody fleeing the scene, fleeing from these cops, and he was chased down. It was Michael Bennett, and so I don't know. I'm holding off, but needless to say, a huge story. And in a perfect world, well, I guess in a perfect world, these things wouldn't happen, but just for the sake of my story here, in a perfect world, if this happened to anybody, it would be big news, but it's not. Unfortunately, that's just not the case. It becomes big news when it's a high-profile athlete or a celebrity, and when you factor in the idea that Michael Bennett is one of the most progressive and active, athletes just in all sports, not just in the NFL, but athletes across the board. This guy, he uses his damn platform and he stands up for what he believes in. And lately it's been, injustices against people of color, police brutality against African Americans. And then so for this to happen to him, it was pretty wild. It really was crazy. But moving on into the NFL here, and I'll actually probably start to wrap this up. What are we? We're coming up on a half hour almost. So Ezekiel Elliott gets suspended, but kind of, sort of, not really. He gets suspended, and we knew this was going to be happening. He had been suspended for 6 games for a couple of weeks now. When you get suspended for regular season games, you can play in the preseason, but he gets suspended it was a couple weeks ago, and then now we're here in week 1, and he's obviously got his legal team, and him and the Cowboys are going to appeal the suspension. They say there's no evidence against me, and he's right. There is no evidence against him. He was not found guilty of any crime in the eyes of the court of law, but the NFL still said he violated, conduct policies, and he was suspended for 6 games. But he gets to play on week 1. How the hell does that happen? How the hell does that happen? Was he suspended or not? And so the NFL is saying, yes, he's suspended for 6 games. He appealed it. A lot of people thought it might get reduced to 4 or 2. It stood at 6. But then the NFL says you can play week 1 because of the timing of the decision. And I go, I'm sorry. We all knew 2 weeks ago that he was suspended for 6 games. It's stupid, but I'll bring it to fantasy football. People that were doing their fantasy football drafts, you might have held off on Ezekiel Elliott for a later round, but when you were thinking about drafting him, you were doing so with the impression that he was going to miss weeks 1 through 6 because he had a 6-game suspension. So for the NFL to then say, well, he can play week 1, I go, oh, week 1? You mean Sunday Night Football in Dallas with a national television audience? Look, one of my favorite movies, and I actually think it's incredibly underrated. You don't hear it too often as far as hilarious comedies over the last 10, 15 years. Role Models with Paul Rudd and Stifler. I think his name's Sean William Scott or Sean Michael Scott. But that guy will forever be known as just Stifler to me. And Jane Lynch is in it, and it's the 2 guys, and they're working, they're buddies for these little kids, and it is an absolutely hilarious movie. But Jane Lynch, who is just priceless throughout this entire movie, she has the phrase, and she uses it several times throughout the movie, and it's become it might be my next tattoo. I might get it just inked up on my body. You can't bullshit a bullshitter, and I can bullshit with the best of them. NFL, you can't bullshit a bullshitter. You can't BS a BSer. I think that might be the actual quote from the movie. Don't try to tell me it was because of the timing of the decision. Are you crazy? Stop it. Roger Goodell, take a seat. Roger, why don't you have a seat? Stop it. Bad Roger. You stop it. Do not tell me it was because of the decision or the timing of the decision. It was 110% because it's the Dallas Cowboys, it's Jerry Jones, and it's Sunday Night Football, and it's NBC, and it's Carrie Underwood's beautiful self singing the theme song, and it's the national audience, and they needed the, all-pro running back, second-year running back, Ezekiel Elliott in that game. Bet me right now. Burrito bet, okay? If the Cowboys are opening their season on the road, 10 a.m. in Cleveland, yeah, Zeke's suspended. They're going to start his suspension there. But because it's Sunday Night Football in Jerry's world and NBC and national audience, got to keep Zeke. The NFL, man. I hate it. I hate the NFL, dude. I hate it so much. And what I hate more than the NFL is I hate that I'm such a freaking sheep to it. I mean, the NFL screwed San Diego. I have no problems with you saying I'm done with this league after how they let the Chargers just take us out to the cleaners and move to Los Angeles, a place that doesn't want them. I have no argument against being just done with the NFL, and I suppose maybe for my career, as right now my job as a sports radio producer, that might play into it. But I'm still gonna watch. I'm not necessarily saying I'm gonna watch every minute of every Chargers game, but I'm still going to watch the NFL. I'm a freaking sheep. I'm their bitch. I'm the NFL's bitch. It just pisses me off. But don't tell me it was because of the timing of the decision, all right? It was 100% because it's Sunday Night Football in Dallas, in Jerry's world. Again, if they were playing in Cleveland on a 10 a.m. game on CBS or Fox or wherever, that Zeke would not be playing. And the thing that kind of concerns me that I was thinking about was I just hope that this doesn't open up a can of worms, and I hope that it doesn't set a precedent that, hey, you get suspended, you violated the conduct policy, or you get popped for a drug test or something like that, right? Say, so-and-so gets a 4-game suspension, but you can pick and choose those 4 games. I sure hope we are not heading down that road. I'm not saying Jerry Jones had a ton of influence on this decision. I mean, it's Jerry Jones. He's the real commissioner of the NFL, so he very well could have. I just don't know who decided to allow who decided to allow Ezekiel Elliott to play in week 1. But I just really, really, really hope that we are not heading down a road where if a guy gets suspended for 2 games, okay, we're going to make it weeks 9 and 10 because we play the Jets and then the Bills back to back, and we can live without, this contributor to our team, this key skill player, or, even worse. Okay, well, we're going to pick games 1, and then I guess we'll make it week 6 as well. I sure hope that's not the case. But based on what's been going on, wouldn't surprise me if that were to happen down the road. But I sure hope not. A couple things winding it down here on the podcast, episode 53 of the Reiner Report. Switching over to college football. Big week for the Aztecs, my black and red, San Diego State. We got 2 big games coming up. Pac-12 teams. We're going to be on the road upcoming this weekend at Arizona State. Very winnable game, I think, for the Aztecs. And, I had a friend who I'm sure is listening to this podcast right now, actually. He's a Pac-12 guy, and it might not have even been football. I think it was football. I think it was the Cal game last year when San Diego State beat Cal, and he goes, dude, Cal's not that good. And I had to explain to him, look, this is the Mountain West, all right? This is not a Power 5 conference. This isn't the Pac-12. Anytime, and Mountain West above the rest, by the way, but anytime that a Mountain West team can knock off a Pac-12 team, even if it's in basketball, football, what have you, it's a big deal for that Mountain West team. So I don't care that Arizona State was one of, if not the worst teams in the Pac-12 last year. It's still a Pac-12 school. So for San Diego State to have a chance to go onto the road and beat Arizona State, kind of a big deal. But I find myself somewhat conflicted. Just somewhat conflicted here. If San Diego State were to win against Arizona State, they'd be 2-0. And then on September 16th, we got Stanford coming into town. And Stanford, I think they're ranked about 14th right now. I think that sounds right heading into week 2. Stanford, they've got a big showdown against USC. Now, I went to San Diego State. I did not go to USC. So this should be an easy one. But I still find myself a little bit conflicted because my entire life, most of my adult life, I've been a fan of the USC Trojans. They are what got me into college football. How old am I? 26. I turn 27 next week. Hit me up on Twitter if you would like my Venmo account. You can send me a happy birthday gift. September 14th. Don't forget it. Write it down. But for most of my life, I've been a Trojans fan too. I mean, I bleed black and red, but those USC teams of the early to mid 2000s, those Pete Carroll teams with Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, the national title teams, that's what got me in to college football. If I were to just focus on the local teams, most of my friends, they liked Washington State growing up, so I leaned towards Wazoo as far as the Washington State rivalry. But at the end of the day, I didn't care because I didn't want to go to any of those schools. I had no intention to go to either of those schools. I didn't care. But always was a fan of USC, and they've got Sam Darnold, and they're coming off an incredibly successful season last year where they have hopes and aspirations to be they plan on being in the college football playoffs in the Final Four. So if Stanford were to beat USC, that is going to cause the Trojans to take a huge toll on their hopes of reaching the college football playoffs. And this is where the confliction comes in, because on one hand, I don't want that to happen to the Trojans. I want, their local regional team, I want them to win out. I want them to be in the Final Four. I think that'd be great. Sam Darnold's going to be one of, if not the top draft pick in the NFL draft next season. Him and Josh Rosen also. That's the real fight for LA. Who's better, Josh Rosen or Sam Darnold? That's the real fight for LA. You hear me, Chargers? You freaking morons. But, so on one hand, I do want the Trojans to win. But on the other hand, if Stanford can knock off USC, then damn USC's aspirations of making the college football playoffs. San Diego State all of a sudden is 2-0, and they're facing a top 10 Pac-12 team in the Stanford Cardinal. And all of a sudden that game is massive. I can't think of, at least off the top of my head, a bigger home game for the Aztecs ever. Ever. Last year they were saying the game against Cal, just because Cal was, a pretty good Pac-12 team, they were saying that was one of, if not the biggest, San Diego State home games ever, which is kind of embarrassing, but besides the point. So for a top 10 Stanford team to be coming to town, that would be huge. College game day, where you at? Get your ass down to blank stadium. I can't call it Qualcomm because it's not Qualcomm anymore. The sign was actually taken down last week, so we don't know what it's called. San Diego Stadium, I guess. College game day. Calling you out. Lee Corso, where you at? Get your ass down here so you can come. College football game day, Saturday, September 16th, Stanford and San Diego State. Let's make it happen. But that would be pretty damn cool. Now, as far as San Diego State's chances to win that game, as much of a homer as I would love to be, I just don't see it happening. Stanford's good. Stanford's a hell of a lot better than Arizona State. If I were to pick, I would suggest that San Diego State will beat Arizona State, and they will lose to Stanford, whether they're a top 10 team or not. And I'm okay with that. Your first 3 games, you got the cupcake game against UC Davis. You took care of business there. You go on the road. You beat a Pac-12 school. And then you lose to an admirable opponent in a top 25 Stanford Cardinal team. You go 2-1 out of those 3. I'm okay with that. I can live with that. The other game I'm watching, Boise State and Washington State. Washington State's no slouch. They don't get the most recognition in the Pac-12. You got your USC, you got your Washingtons, you got Stanford, UCLA just on their name alone gets more recognition. But Mike Leach, he's got a pretty damn good squad. They are a solid team over there on the Palouse in Pullman, Washington. Luke Falk, I swear to God, that guy's been the quarterback for the Cougars for like 15 years, but apparently it's only like 4. So I'm going to be watching that game. Because there are, again, I find myself a little bit conflicted with that one. I hate Boise State. I hate them. Their stupid ass Smurf turf. Ooh, it just grinds my gears. I do not like Boise State. Football, basketball. I don't like their women's water polo team. I hate their rowing team. I hate their stupid track and field team. I do not like Boise State. I would be very happy if Washington put up 52 points on them and won. But what if San Diego State and Boise State were to go undefeated by the time they meet in October? That would mean San Diego State beats Stanford, which is huge. But maybe they both have 1 loss. I don't know. But I'm just saying, what if it were to happen that way? Then all of a sudden we look down the road, we see this Boise State-San Diego State matchup. Do we want Boise State to lose? Do we want them to be undefeated so it's a more impressive win? I guess at that point, it comes down to which side of the glass are you? Are you half full, glass half empty? It's going to come down to personal preference. Personally, I guess I hadn't really thought about it as much as I had. I kind of just made a little note of that game here, but I would rather... I guess I'd rather have them lose to Washington State because I am expecting San Diego State to fall to Stanford. I would love to be proven wrong on that one, but I see Stanford winning that game on the 16th. So that being said, that gives San Diego State a loss. So to even the playing field, yeah, go Cougs. There we go. Stupid freaking Boise State. Wrapping it up, a couple more things. Something I did last week that I want to continue to do on future podcasts here on the Rinder Report. Just some Twitter highlights because Twitter Twitter is home to the lowest, just most disgusting, hot, steaming pile of garbage human beings. It's just like reading the comments section on Facebook. All right, there are some horrible people that can say terrible things in 140 characters or less. Twitter sucks sometimes, most of the time. But sometimes Twitter's awesome. Sometimes there are things that make me laugh out loud. And because I'm just thinking of it now, I only had one that I was going to talk about, and it's going to be the one that I spend most of my time talking about. But there was a tweet from that I liked. I'm going to pull it up right now. On Twitter. Yeah, here we go. At BEA_KER at Beaker. Says Eminem, and that's a quote. His palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. The vomit on a sweater already. Mom's spaghetti, So this is Eminem. His palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. And then right below that says WebMD, quote, cancer. I mean, 156,000 likes, 53,000 retweets on episode 53 of the Rinder Report nonetheless. That made me laugh out loud, like audibly laugh out loud. And then some of the replies to that tweet were pretty damn good. But I'm going to digress from that because that was not the highlight that I wrote. It actually just came to mind. There was really only one that I put down. And this is kind of the part of the podcast where, like I said, I want to highlight some of the highlights because Twitter is so full of lowlights that I just want to give you something that maybe you saw it. Maybe it reminds you of something else that makes it, something funny, brings a smile to your face, or maybe you go back and find some of these tweets and it brightens up your day. Look, I'm here for you. I'm trying to help. But J.J. Watt, his social media campaign that started the weekend of Hurricane Harvey hitting his hometown, the city that he plays for, the Houston Texans, obviously. J.J. Watt, man. This guy is a damn American hero. I've always been a fan of J.J. Watt. He has long been one of my favorite players in the NFL. Not just because he's the best defensive player in football. Not just because of that. And do not be mistaken, that guy is a damn good football player. But he seems like just the most down-to-earth, genuine dude. When I read the story of J.J. Watt, who, every offseason, he goes and he rents out this cabin in the middle of the woods, and it's just him and one other person, and it's not his wife. I don't know if he's married or not. It's not a family member. It's not a friend. I guess they might be friends. It's a chef, and he prepares him the meals that he needs to, give his body the right nutrients and keep his body in shape, and he just works out. He has isolated himself. He's not on his phone. He's not watching TV. He's not reading the news. He just goes for this cabin for weeks on end, I think it is. It's been a while since I've read their story. Chill out. And, he's chopping wood. Dude's just working out like a beast, like a man. Like freaking Grizzly Adams. And that's what he does. That's his work ethic. I think that's awesome. Then the dude signs a $100 million paycheck, and some reporter asked him, oh, what are you buying with that? How are you going to spend that money? This is great. This is life-changing for you. And he goes, he says, he bought his mom her house. I think he bought her a car or something like that. And then he put it all away. Every penny, he said, of that contract. Obviously, he had previous contracts money, to live off of, and I'm sure do very well for himself. But that big contract, his mega contract that he signed, he put it away. He goes, I don't know how long I'm going to be playing football. It could be over tomorrow. I could break my leg and this team could cut me and I'm out of my contract. I need to make every penny that I earn. I got to make that last for me and mine. He's humble. He's a good dude. So Hurricane Harvey hits, and J.J. Watt, obviously extremely close to the situation, a hell of a lot closer than me, and most likely closer than you as well. He starts a social media campaign with, I think it was YouGiving.com, and he wants to raise $200,000. He got that in 5 minutes. And I'm following his Twitter feed, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, we got $200,000 already. This is awesome. He's posting video updates throughout the whole time. So let's bump it up, 500,000. Shoot, we got 500,000. We're aiming for $1 million. And then Ellen DeGeneres, she sends $1 million right away. It's like, let's go to 2 million. And then all of a sudden it's 5 million. And then the next day it's 10 million. And he's giving all these updates. And I'm going, this is awesome. And at the time that this podcast is being recorded, the evening of Wednesday, September 6th, he is at already over $20 million. J.J. Watt, just by his following on social media, on Twitter and Instagram, the fans of his, and then obviously there's plenty of people that don't even know, they might not have known who J.J. Watt was, but then this campaign goes viral and everybody is donating to it. I donated some money myself because it just moved me. J.J. Watt, thank you. You are a hero. I guess the unfortunate reality is that the damage that has been done to the fourth largest city in the country, they need about 200 J.J. Watts all doing these social media campaigns, but $20 million is nothing to sneeze at. J.J. Watt, thank you. And that's the highlights of Twitter. That's the only one I needed. Well, that and the WebMD tweet. Wrapping it up on episode 53 of the Reindl Report. Going to be taking a couple of days off. Have another podcast for you next week at some point. Follow me on Twitter at Paul Reindl SD. It's not the polar bear. Follow me on Twitter at Paul Reindl SD. You can get this podcast as well as any other podcast that I've done, any interview that's been done at www.thereindelreport.com. You can also go on iTunes if you got your phone, if you got an iPhone, find the podcast app, the little icon with the purple microphone, click that, type in the Reindl Report and hit subscribe. That's all I'm asking you to do. What does that do for you? Well, not a whole lot, I guess. I'm sure it helps me more than it helps you. But if you liked what you heard, then you subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. And every time that I post a new podcast, whatever day, whatever time, it takes about, I think, like 45 minutes. And then you get a little notification on your phone. It downloads it right to your phone and it says, hey, new episode available. And so I would love for you to do that. Give me some feedback. I'm here for you. I'm doing this for you. I'm not getting paid to do this podcast. I'm doing it for fun, but I want to appeal to any of my listeners. If you're a regular listener, if this is the first time you've ever heard of this podcast, please send me a comment on iTunes or on my website, or tweet at me. Let me know what you liked. Let me know what you didn't like. Let me know what you want to hear more of. Let me know what you never want to hear me talk about again. I'll see what I can do. But until then, it's going to wrap it up. Like I said, you can get me on Venmo to send me a birthday present next week. And one last thing before I leave real quick. 9/11 is coming up on Monday, I believe. Monday, the opening night, Monday Night Football at least. Chargers are going to be on, taking on the Broncos. 9/11, and I'm not going to get into it. My guess is if you're listening to this podcast, you experienced it. You know what happened. You remember where you were on that morning. I believe it was a Tuesday. I remember just about every detail of that day, but just one little nugget, and it's sports related, so that's why I threw it into this podcast here at the end. For me, I know a lot of people that, so many news networks and television channels, they show, footage from that day, and, they show you like the original broadcasts from like CBS News or NBC or whatever, and you get to kind of relive it. Personally, I try not to get into it too much because I was there, I lived it. I certainly don't get too much into the conspiracy videos. I do have some questions, I think, but I don't get into it too much. But one thing that I do find myself stumbling across really right around this time every year, George W. Bush, and this is not a political thing at all, because right versus left did not matter at the time that 9/11 happened. But George Bush, when baseball finally resumed from their time off, George Bush goes out and he throws out the first pitch at Yankee Stadium. And he throws a freaking dart, man. Just a strike right down the heart of the plate. And there's a video, you can go on YouTube and type in just George W. Bush first pitch, and it'll be the first thing that comes up. It's like 5 minutes, a little clip from like a 30 for 30 or ESPN Films, one of those documentaries, and it was awesome. Derek Jeter, he's talking to the president's asking him, got any advice for me? Like, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to throw out this first pitch. You got any words of wisdom? And Jeter just goes, yeah, don't throw a ball. Like, they'll boo you. And he was so right. Like, if you throw a ball at Yankee Stadium in front of a sold-out crowd, they're going to boo you. They're like the Eagles fans throwing batteries and snowballs at Santa Claus, all right? They're ruthless out there in the Bronx. Don't throw a ball. And Bush did not. He came out there and he threw an absolute dart, just a strike. And I remember that game. I remember that moment. At that point in time, we were all Yankees fans. We were all New York fans. It's unfortunate that it came in the midst of a horrible tragedy, but just the unity that America had at that time, it was pretty moving. I remember that feeling, and especially, in today's day and age, the divisiveness that we have here in the divided states of America. we just don't have that going on right now. And so I remember that. I remember what it felt like. And so if you're going to stumble across anything for 9/11, maybe you're going to watch one of those original news broadcasts. Maybe you're just going to watch a video in remembrance of what happened on that day. Maybe you're going to watch one of the documentaries, the conspiracy movies. I don't know, but since it's sports related, if you were going to watch anything, I would highly recommend getting on YouTube. It takes just a couple seconds to find, and it's only like 4 or 5 minutes long. Just type in George W. Bush first pitch and just relive that moment, that first pitch. It was awesome. So kept it under an hour at least. Wasn't planning on going this long, but that's going to wrap it up for me. Again, on iTunes at www.thereindelreport.com and on Twitter at Paul Reindl SD. Birthday coming up next week, so don't forget to hit me up on Venmo and send me that birthday cash, that cheddar, that Gouda. I'm losing my mind right now. That's gonna do it for me. Definitely will have a podcast. Got something else coming up that I will be promoting next week on Twitter. So if you don't follow me yet, follow me you can follow the Reindl Report. That is a Twitter handle, but much more active at Paul Reindl SD. Definitely will have something for you guys next week, both here and on another podcast. I will be a guest at one next week. That'll be announced at a later time. So that's going to do it for me. Talk to you next week. I'm out.